This is quite a test, right? A.J. Russell, welcome to Friday starting, and welcome to a top 25 matchup to start up the season.
Absolutely. Texas Tech, a very nice baseball program, and it'll be a nice test for Tennessee right out of the gates. And very interested to see how A.J. Russell pitches in the opener. I think a lot of Tennessee fans were surprised when Tony Vitello announced earlier this week that Drew Beam was going to start game 2 against Oklahoma, and A.J. Russell was going to get the ball on opening night, his first career start. First time stepping into a starting role. He was mostly a bullpen guy last year and really didn't pitch a ton until the end of the season and really the postseason. So very curious to see how AJ performs. I think he's going to do great. I saw him pitch last Friday, a week from today, and he was pitching against the quote unquote starting lineup, at least what I think will be the starting lineup, and he made the starting lineup look very, very silly. And it's a starting lineup that has Christian Moore and Blake Burke and Billy Amick and so on and so forth. And they look like they had never swung a baseball bat before. So, again, I know a lot of people were surprised by Drew Beam not starting game 1. Tony Vitello, Frank Anderson, they just don't have the traditional mindset of best arm in game 1, second best arm in game 2, third best arm in game 3. I think that they see some value in Drew Beam pitching on Saturday. That way, if you have won on Friday night, then he can give you a series win on Saturday. Or if you lose on Friday night, then he can avoid going 0-2 to start the season or to lose a series. And the way that I look at it, simply put, Josh, is that Drew Beam didn't do anything wrong at all. A.J. Russell is just that good, and A.J. Russell could end up being Tennessee's best pitcher this season. I view it as a 1A, 1B type of situation rather than a starter number 1, starter number 2 type of situation.
How would you compare this team this year to last year's team heading into the season, opening the season last year? Tennessee fell short to start the season, and folks kind of panicking, but the off-season, bringing in new faces, bringing in new guys, how these guys mesh, how would you compare the two teams at this point?
Yeah, in terms of the way that the roster is constructed, I do feel like it's a little bit flipped. Last year's lineup proved to be perfectly fine, but going into the year, it had some key pieces to replace and had some new guys in new roles, whereas you were going to have to really lean on the pitching staff to start last season, which they certainly did. This year, I think it's going to be flipped. I think that you're going to lean on the offense from top to bottom. It's got so much depth and so many lethal hitters. Tony Vitello told John Wilkerson earlier this week on Sports Talk that it's as much depth as he's been around on the position player side of things. So they have several options for the lineup. I'm glad I'm not in charge of making the lineup each game, although I would love if Tony wanted to throw me 5 here and there. I'd love to have Tony's salary and contract. I'd take that in a heartbeat, but I'm not in charge of writing out the lineup, thankfully, because he's going to have some tough decisions to make. I mean, you have 9 spots in the lineup, but you probably have 15 or so guys that are very capable of getting the job done. So they're going to have to carry the way and lead the way for a pitching staff that it's trying to find out what it's going to look like after losing so many guys from last year's pitching staff. You have A.J. Russell and you have Drew Beam, as we talked about, but you're trying to figure out who's going to be that third starter. I think Xander Seacrest probably gets that third start on Sunday against Baylor. And then the bullpen, you have some familiar faces, but you don't really know who the go-to guys are going to be out of the bullpen as you start the season. You have a lot of options and a lot of guys who are capable of getting the job done, but they've got to go earn some jobs, earn some roles, and kind of grab the bull by the horns and show Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson that they can be relied upon out of the bullpen. So to me, that's the difference in this year's team and last year's team. I do think that this team has better team chemistry going into the year than last year's team. And that's not only my opinion, but something that several players and Tony Vitello himself has stated publicly over the last several months while they were going through fall practice and preseason practice leading up to the opener.
Big McKee of GoVols247, you mentioned not minding having Tony Vitello's salary. You probably want his hair too.
Yes.
What about the new faces, the transfers? Who do you think will start off fast? We saw last year some guys come in. It took them a little bit to get going. Maui Ahuna took him a little bit to get going. Do you anticipate that happening for some of the new faces on this squad this year?
I don't anticipate it taking some time to settle in. Um, A, nobody is ruled ineligible to start the season unless I'm completely blindsided leading up the first pitch tonight. I don't see any Maui Ahuna situations popping up between now and first pitch, so I think that's a good place to start. But Tony Vitello has raved the last couple of months going back to the fall about how all of those transfers have really settled in and really gelled right away and fit in the locker room. There's the obvious names, but a guy like Chris Stamos, he's come in and been a popular figure in the locker room. Everybody loves him. He's a lefty reliever from Cal. He's going to have a chance to earn a role on this team. And somewhat of a transfer, not necessarily from the transfer portal, but from the junior college ranks, Robin Villeneuve. It looks like it's Villanueva, but it's Villeneuve because he's from Quebec. He has a dynamic personality, somebody that always has everybody laughing and great leadership skills and a ton of power in the bat. So he's not somebody that I think is on the forefront of a lot of people's mind, but he can have a Griffin Merritt type of impact both in the locker room and at the plate with the power in his bat. He has been somebody that's come in and quickly emerged as a leader. So a lot of talk about guys gelling right away, and not just those two, but Billy Amick fit in right away. Cannon Peebles has fit in right away. Dalton Bargo, the list goes on and on. AJ Causey, who's from our neck of the woods in Huntsville, went to Sparkman High School, Swain, was at Jacksonville State before transferring up here. So I've heard a lot of good things about the transfers and how they fit in, and that's a good thing because every single one of them is going to be relied upon. Billy Amick's going to be your everyday third baseman and batting in the 3-hole. He's a preseason All-American. Cannon Peebles, he's probably going to platoon at catcher starting out, but that's a bat that's going to be hard for Tony Vitello not to keep in the lineup every single day. I did not mention Nate Snead, who's had a good return from Christmas break leading up to the season. A guy that's been 99 to 101 on the mound the last couple of weeks, and somebody who can be a power arm out of the bullpen. So there's a lot of new faces, and all of those new faces are going to be thrown into the fire right away. Tennessee needs them to not only gel early, like you mentioned, Swain, but they need them to contribute right away as well.
Hey, Ben, last thing, we'll get you out of here. Tennessee's a top 10 team, not the only SEC team in the top 10. What are the Vols facing in terms of league competition once again this year?
It's brutal. It's SEC baseball is SEC baseball. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, how many SEC teams are ranked in front of Tennessee. I go by D1 Baseball's top 25 rankings. I want to say 3 or 4 were in the top 5. Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, and I think A&M's in the top 10. So Tennessee's ranked number 9 according to the D1 Baseball, and the number 9 in the precinct top 25, but that's like 5th or 6th in the SEC by their ranking. So SEC baseball is just an absolute beast. It's only going to become even more difficult, just like it is in football with adding Texas and Oklahoma. But it's going to be difficult as it is every year. There's some big time matchups every single weekend for this club, weekend and weekend out. But the good news is that Tony Vitello, Josh Elander, those guys have accumulated quite a bit of talent, and they are recruiting as well as anybody in the country. The recruiting rankings suggest that, and it's stiff competition weekend in and weekend out, but they should be just fine. I don't see much of a difference between this team and the last couple of teams for Tennessee, and when you say that, that means that this team is capable of winning the SEC and winning the national championship and getting to Omaha. So the road will be The road will be tough, but they're plenty of capable of navigating it and hosting that trophy on the final day of the season.